Denise Doyle for helping us out. Thank you to Jenny, Carter, and Cord. There, I believe, is ice cream in the cooler over here. So make sure you get some ice cream. And thank you to the League of Women Voters who are set up in the tent back there with registration information as well as information about current issues that voters are facing. With its door slam heard around the world in 1879, Ibsen's A Doll's House ignited a debate about what it means to be female and male. 140 years later, our understanding of human identity goes well beyond traditional ideas of gender and sexuality. enGENDERing Change, the ASU Gender Theatre Project examines the past, explores the present, and celebrates a future where every individual is empowered to live as their own authentic self. enGENDERing Change features the award-winning play A Doll's House Part 2, which runs this weekend, a nationally juried art exhibition, which is going to open next week in the art building, and much more. Combining the arts, education, activism, and community engagement, our project affirms the continuing need to fight for gender equity, to champion an individual's right to self-determination, and to foster the extraordinary diversity which enriches our campus. Our project is about celebrating a future where every individual is empowered to live as their own authentic self. But as our lead character Nora in A Doll's House Part 2 says, 20, 30 years from now, the world isn't going to be the kind of place I say it's going to be unless I'm the one to make it that way. Before we can celebrate such a future, we must work to make it possible. Today we ask a basic question. What will each of us do to make this a campus, a community, a state, nation, and world in which each person is able to live as their own authentic self? It is time for us all to rise now and let the world know where we stand and be part of the change. Fighting for gender equity, standing up against racism, advocating for equality under the law for LGBTQ plus individuals, and championing an individual's right to self-determination. We must take the actions to create the change we desire. At our table, we have t-shirts, so if you haven't gotten one yet, please take one. We also have cards, and on the back of the card is a place where you can write a daily action that you plan to do in your own voice, with your words or your actions that you want to do in order to make this the kind of place and the kind of world in which we can all be ourselves. This rally is a celebration of the progress we have made and a call to action by committing to the actions we still need to take. We have several speakers who will share with us about their commitment to action. First, I'd like to welcome to the mic President Cheryl Lovell.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor, and thank you for being here today. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this important celebration. The enGENDERing Change, the ASU Gender Theatre Project, is so uplifting. As described by Dr. Taylor, it examines the past, explores the present, and celebrates a future where every individual is empowered to be their own authentic self. What a wonderful focus and purpose, and what an excellent institution to have such a supportive purpose. As you know, Adams State's mission is to educate, to serve, to inspire our diverse populations in their pursuit of lifelong dreams and ambitions. Our vision is to become the university of choice for diverse, historically underserved groups who value quality education and inclusivity. This place, this institution, where we focus on gender equity and recognize the continued need to fight for equity. This is the place, this university, where we embrace and foster diversity. This is the place, your home, where we want you to be the best you. We have progress, we've made progress, but we know that we need to continue to work for the fight for equality never ends. Seeing the movie last night, On the Basis of Sex, now for the second time, I was struck again with the absurdity of the thinking that of that era, of that time, that to believe that equality would upset our natural order, equality would upset our culture, equality would upset our way of being. Frankly, I left pumped again because at the end of the movie, the battle for equality in this movie, when the audio of Ruth Bader Ginsburg played At the end of the movie, RBG is providing oral arguments to the U.S. Supreme Court in the 1973 case of Ontario v. Richardson. In that oral argument, RBG quotes Sarah Grimke as she says, I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks. What a defining moment for so many women to hear that quote again. And it's frankly a uplifting quote for me and does pump me up. Please know we firmly believe Adams State is a place where you can be you, and we will work to support you in being the best you possible. We will ensure that no one has their feet on your neck. This celebration of gender equality is important. It's not a one-day event. It's not a week-long series of events. Inclusion, pride, equity, justice, and the opportunity to be you must be celebrated every day. We must work to keep equity and justice centerpiece in our community and ensure our policies and regulations here at Adams State honor the same principles. So thank you for being here, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for taking part of this important, uplifting event.
Thank you, Dr. Lovell. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Santana.
I'm little. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say that I'm dressing up as RBG for Halloween this year. And often what happens with events like these is that it's a little about preaching to the choir, right? So my challenge to you is to spread this to all those who aren't here. I also want to take a moment, since you gave me a microphone, to promote the Women's and Gender Studies minor. It's interdisciplinary. There are two tracks, the Women's Studies track and the Gender and Sexualities track. There's a lot of overlap between. And I will also shamelessly plug my Women, Politics, and Culture class next semester. It's an election year, so it will be really interesting. Now, because I teach women's and gender studies, I'm often confronted with the question of its relevance, right? The subtext is that we should be content because things are so much better now. They are good enough. It's good enough. And my response is to ask another question. Why should we measure our progress with the yardstick of our past instead of the yardstick of our future? So rather than comparing our society to what it once was, let us look to what it can become, because good enough isn't good enough. The yardstick of our past allows us to sort of rest, chill in complacency. The yardstick of our future demands active refusal to accept the status quo, because much of the progress we have made is under threat. Because the political culture that perpetuates, or at the very least tolerates, the sexual assault of 1 in 5 women in the United States and rampant sexual harassment that we see coming to light every day, the same political culture that plays an active role, or at the very least tolerates the fact that women on average earn 79 cents to every dollar a man makes, and women of color even less, with Latinas earning only 54 cents. The same political culture that promotes, or at the very least tolerates, the idea that a woman's self-esteem should be measured by her dress size. That same political culture that promotes, or at the very least tolerates, global warming and cares more about telling people what bathrooms to use. The same political culture that promotes, or at the very least tolerates, rigid gender binaries so that trans women of color are murdered at a disproportionately higher rate. That same political culture, which allows for so many other injustices that are too numerous to be listed in a short speech, is the same political culture that elects leaders all around the world who will take us backwards 100 steps unless we refuse. Refuse to be demeaned, denigrated, or denied an equal share. Refuse to feel like we deserved it, or that we are powerless or small. Refuse to accept good enough. Almost 20 years ago, before hashtags were a thing, I thought I was so cutting edge because my research involved how women in Latin America were using this relatively new thing called the World Wide Web to communicate and organize across borders. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be revolutionary. Now I feel like I've been left in the dust a little bit as Facebook, Twitter campaigns have harnessed global support for so many marginalized people, the campaigns of marginalized people around the world. And if Tumblr is any indication, the revolution is tomorrow. I have hope, thanks to those who defiantly state that their feminism is intersectional, and rightly so. The appreciation for the different intersections between gender, class, ethnicity, sexuality, nationality, age, and so many others, with all of their pertinent hashtags, contains the power to start so many conversations with so many more people who can then collectively shape our future, what we can become. Now, as part of this enGENDERing Change project, we've been asked, right, to commit, to challenge ourselves. My challenge for this past year has been to speak up unapologetically for myself and others. And as a cis, straight, white-looking Latina woman who doesn't have to worry about food or housing or healthcare or war, I can't pretend to understand the struggles of others who don't have my privilege. But that doesn't mean that we can't rail against the injustice perpetrated against people anywhere, or celebrate the victories against injustice achieved by people everywhere. So my challenge to myself and to you, if you're looking for a challenge, if you're in need of one, is to speak up, even if it makes people angry, even if it makes people uncomfortable, because if we don't speak up, we will be deafened by those who speak hatred, and we will be paralyzed by their power. Speaking up doesn't mean to be unkind. It is to refuse unkindness to yourself and to others. So I challenge you to refuse to be demeaned, denigrated, or denied an equal share. Refuse to feel like you deserved it or that you were powerless or small. Refuse to accept good enough.